So, hello. We are here today to share with you our experiences about files and people. You see here just me and Gianna, but this whole presentation is the result of the contribution of the whole company. And so, who are we? We are from SimCorp Italiana, as Richard said, and we work on SimCorp Sofia. Sofia was born in 1993 and became the leading provider of integrated investment management solution for the Italian insurance. Then we also moved internationals, so now we have more than 15 institutional investors. The most of them use Italian, but we have also clients using English. So in Sofia we have two official languages that are Italian and English. When you work with software, usually it's impossible to not have to deal with the import to get data into your application or exports to send data to user or other application. So you receive a specification, you develop your code, you test your code and deliver it. And then it works, but after some time something crashes. And this can be frustrating, but it can lead to funny anecdotes if you are able, and usually you are able, to solve them. So all the examples in this presentation are based on true stories, so something that happened and we solved within the company. Sofia is a software. So here we are going to explain you about three types of interaction: software versus software, software versus human, and the most funny one that is software versus software, but with human check. Because people usually doesn't trust what moves between software, they want to check before. The type we are speaking about can also be influenced by file format, file encoding, and ambiguity of some fields. So, what happens when the interaction goes wrong? If you are lucky, the interface we built crashes. And so it's strange to think that the crash is a good thing, but it's better than the other solution, that is when the import-export work, but the data is spoiled. What's more, if you have a crash, you have a starting point for your analysis. That is not such easy if everything worked. In any case, in both cases, you have to solve it. And it can be that you have to fix your program. For example, if something changed in the file, it will stay changed in the file for long. Or you have to contact the user or their other software programmers and explain which the problem is and see which one will solve the issue. Gianna?
Here's a list of the most commonly used import-export formats in Sofia. We have a text file format with fixed width in unencoding, text file format with fixed width and delimiter also in unencoding, CSV, XML, and Excel. And the first four format types are plain text file, and we have to develop an import from a text plain file. One of the required specification is the end-of-line character, because it usually depends on the OS that generates the file. But once you know it, it should be valid forever as long as the file comes from the same source. But sometimes it may happen that the user opens the file in another OS and they somehow manage to save it and change the end-of-line character, and the import crashes. Possible solution to these problems is to ask the user to retrieve the original file, or and if they need to modify it, they can do it in the same OS, in the original OS, or there are some text editors that allows you to choose the end-of-line character. And now let's review each format type. And I start with the fixed width. In a fixed width format, each field has a specified number of characters, and and therefore it is easy for a machine to read it. But you have to define a dictionary, and that can be boring. But you do it just once. There are a lot of useless blanks, and that can be a problem, can be relevant if the file is big. What about user readability? Well, this example is quite easy to read, but what about this one? I made this file, and I'm not comfortable with it. And if the user needs to change some specific values inside the file, well, they need to pay extra attention, because it is very easy to add or delete a character from a field, or to modify a character from the wrong field. And the import crashes, or even worse, the data is wrong. And the only solution we found out for this is to retrieve the original file and try to pay even more attention than before. Also, in Sofia, in the standard export tool of Sofia, the fixed width test file comes with ANSI encoding, where one character is 1 byte. And therefore, you know the number of bytes in one line beforehand, and it is easy to read it in chunks, and you can easily pick one specific value in a record. And in the first part of Sofia history, we only had the Italian customer, and ANSI encoding was enough. So we were able to enjoy the benefits of the 1 byte, 1 character equivalence for a while, and then that thing changed with time, but we'll talk about it later. And another format we have in Sofia is the fixed width format with delimiter. I tried to Google it. I didn't find a standard name for it. It's a mix of fixed width and CSV file, and it is easier to read for the user, while a program can process it either as a CSV or as a fixed width file. And it still has extra blank spaces, and even though it has a delimiter, you cannot use the delimiter as a character itself inside a text file, because it doesn't support quotation marks. But we will see more about quotation marks when we talk about CSV. What about user readability? Well, it is easy to check, even with difficult data. And if the user needs to modify the data, I find that the delimiter really helps. And then CSV, that is a very commonly used format, and it gets rid of useless spaces. How does it do it? You choose a special character that would be your delimiter, and you put it at the beginning and at the end of your field. But what if you want to use your delimiter as a character itself inside a test field? Well, you choose another special character that will be your test qualifier, and you put it at the beginning of the end of the field that you want to be quoted, so that you can use a special character inside. So quotation marks are mandatory if the field includes special characters, and they are optional in all other cases. But in our experience, we found out that it is not always easy to make a user understand how to use quotation marks. Let's try an example. I want to put this information inside a CSV file, and I want to use the semicolon as the delimiter and the double quote as the test qualifier, and you can see that I also have them as characters inside my test field. Sometimes we receive a file like that, And we cannot read this file because the second line has a field too many, and in the third line there is a field with an invalid format. The solution is to contact the user and to ask them to add the quotation marks. And sometimes we get this file back. Well, there are quotation marks, but they are in the wrong place. And now the second and the third lines are just one big field each. And the solution to this is to contact the user again and just explain how quotation marks work better, explain better how they work. So this is a file we can import. There are quotation marks, but they are at the beginning and the end of the field. And if you need to use the text qualifier as a character, you need to double it. And that is about CSV file import with quotation mark. But what about export and quotation marks? Well, we had some surprises even with export. Because Sofia produces some CSV file that needs to be processed by programs that don't fully support the CSV format. In some cases, the problem was that the program couldn't manage the fact that in some occurrence, in some records, or the field was quoted, in some other records, the same field was not quoted. And it is not always so easy to implement, to have new feature implemented in other programs. Therefore, we had to compromise. And the possible solution we found out is to add quotation mark to all test fields, even if it's not needed, because that's always an option. And in one case, the user suggested to remove the test qualifier and delimiter for the test field. But that is not always a viable solution. Only the user may tell you if it is possible. So this was the user-suggested solution. About user readability, well, if you have a file with CSV as an extension and you are on Windows, the system will try to open the file with Excel, and that can stir up some confusion between CSV and Excel files. This is some example of fake CSV file we got. The file is as CSV as an extension, and if you open it with Excel, it kind of seems like a CSV file, but it is not. If you open it with the text editor, you see that it's just an Excel file. And once we also had this fake CSV file, this is basically an actual CSV file copied in the first column of an Excel file, and it has a CSV as an extension, but it is still an Excel file. But even when the user has a CSV file and they try to open with Excel to modify it, it can happen that some data format changes due to local setting, and then the import crashes, or even worse, the imported data is wrong. The possible solution to this problem could be to ask the user to open the file with a text editor, a simple one, or even better, to change the file extension to something else. It could be TST, so that Windows won't try to open with Excel. So this is an actual CSV file. It has TST as an extension. It's still a CSV file. You may notice the yellow dates. Well, they all belong to the same column. So I really understand the user preferring to use Excel to modify an Excel a CSV file. I can relate to this. UTF-8. We said that at the beginning of Sofia's history, we only had Italian customer, and there was no need to support special characters. But as time went by, We acquired international customers, and also our clients started to need non-ANSI characters. So we had to welcome UTF-8, which is a multi-byte encoding, and that makes reading files in chunks a little bit more difficult. And it is a BOM. We have to learn what the BOM is. It was a little bit more work for us, but we do support non-ANSI characters now, and the BOM even has helped us in some cases. And I want to tell you this whole story. A tale of two encodings. Oh, well, we have a process. We generate some text files for an archive, and we have to be able to read them again. And these files were with ANSI encoding, but we had to update them to UTF-8 for special character support. And Sofia had to be able to read about all the new files, but we didn't want to convert all old files. So we switch from NREAD to NGET. And as you know, one of the possible arguments of NGET is the encoding, the encoding file. And the one interesting feature of NGET is that if it detects a BOM, it will just use the encoding in the BOM, and it will ignore the code you pass as an argument. So we decided to use the NGET using the encoding for the old files. And we decided to produce the new files with UTF-8 encoding with BOM. And therefore, we can read both new and old files with one use of NGET. So thanks to NGET and BOM for that.
So another format we use, it's XML. XML is extremely used for web application, and tags hierarchy are supposed to improve readability. Typically, all information is stored in one file, so that it can be used by more applications for different purposes. It's really easy to manage thanks to Code XML, but reading file in chunk is possible, but requires some tricks. More if you want to use Code XML, because you have to remove the main tag or to close it at the end of the chunks you have read. So Code XML will find it the XML field complete. And to exchange the same data, you need a bigger file. That can be easily also if you are fixed with file that can have extra blanks. When compared to the in XML file with the same data, you can see how the size grows. That can become a problem if the data exchanged. So it's a point you have to look if you want to move from one type to another. About user readability. It's true the hierarchy helps, but it helps also only if the file is easy to read. So the first case, you have just a few fields. When you open, also if you open the XML with a browser and you see all the hierarchy, if you have a lot of fields, finding the information you need to check in case of problems can become really difficult. Usually, why we can have such big files? For two reasons. By design, XML are required to open and close the tag before the information you really want to exchange. And if the tag is short, you have a short amount of data to add. The tag can become quite long. So it can happen, or often happens, that the tag it's heavier than the data you want to exchange by itself. Another thing is that programmers are lazy. When you are required to build a new export, you say, okay, it's a new format. Let's put all the fields together in one file, so the next time someone else asks me an export, I can give him the same file. And so you put in the file also fields that are not needed for that special purpose, just to be ready for the future. If the user has to modify, for some reason, the XML, he has to open with a text editor and find the field to change. It can be quite tricky. What's more, looking at files this way, it can be so tricky that the user passes to the application the wrong XML files, because names can be similar, but the main tag inside is different, and they will not notice in such a quantity of data that the main tag is different. The last, but not least, kind of a file, but it's not just file, that we are going to speak about is Excel. Excel is the preferred solution when you have software-user interaction. So the user has to prepare the file to pass data to your application. It's widely used because most of our customers use Windows, and Excel comes for free. It's also to be true that Excel is easy to use. You can specify format. You have a grid to look at the data. So put things in the right place. It's quite easy for a human. And also, if you are not there to set a format for every cell, Excel software try to adapt. So you look at the information as it is exactly a data or a number. Also, if in the beginning you just doesn't write numbers or the data format for Excel. This, in any case, using general format can be a problem when you are reading Excel. Because if you have created the Excel file with an application and you put just a field with 0001 numbers, Excel, opening it, can get rid of the leading zero because it recognizes as a number and convert the content of the field. The same thing also can happen when you have general format, because Excel uses the regional settings. It uses mostly to recognize data, so it can be a problem if you have a data field that are not in the date format, so it's not just a number, but it's a string that Excel recognizes the data when opening, and if you have a customer that have, for example, the client with Italian settings and the server with American data settings, it can crash and give a strange result, because usually it's not a number. Dates, in any case, are always something you have to carefully manage, because also when users open a CSV file with Excel and then save it, this conversion can happen. And so you can have something that initially was a string that became a data, or vice versa. Another nice thing is that you don't have complete specification when writing the application and there is a CSV file and you receive, in the example, this kind of data. You can decide that it's April the 5th or May the 4th. It's up to you. Another problem with the Excel file is that you use Excel software. Until a few years ago, it was the only option available to read Excel files. So your software had to deal with another software to read and exchange information. So your interface can crash, not just because it's something wrong in the file, but because you have a dead session of Excel somewhere between. So you have to contact, what you have often to do is tell the customer, contact your IT service, verify by them, make them verify there is no dead session of Excel on the server, on your PC or other, and then rerun the application. And then usually, 99% of the time, it works. Another problem can arise when you have created the file and are trying to read in the file with different versions of Excel. Not all the Excel versions are compatible, so sometimes it can be that you have to ask the customer to create a new file, open it on another computer with a recent version and save it and then process that, and so on. In the last few years, was created a DLL, so you don't need to use Excel to read the file anymore. That leads us to learn a new thing. Excel doesn't just try to convert fields, but also evaluate formulas when opens a file. So if you are importing a file that has a formula inside, if you just try to read it with the DLL, you will not have the data you expect to read. Luckily, there is a method in the DLL that evaluate formulas before reading the file. So you can find that using that, you can find the value you want to import. Okay.
I spoiled the conclusions.
Sorry.
So we are at the end of the presentation. What did we learn for our experiences with the file exchange? Well, first of all, the first thing we learn is that you cannot avoid all problems beforehand. Therefore, you have to deal with them as they occur. But how to? Well, we need to be curious because sometimes we are unfamiliar with the problem, and that is a good opportunity to broaden our knowledge, both from a technical and from the user point of view. And that is the part that I find the most stimulating. And we need to collaborate with our colleagues that may have met the problem before, and they may help us. But most importantly, we need to collaborate with the user to understand what happens to the file when it is not in our application, and to understand what they need the file for, so that we can work together to help them meet their goals. And in some cases, we need patience, because when the problem is new to you, you have to test several hypotheses to understand the nature of the problem. And then you have to test several possible solutions to be able to suggest the most fitting one. And in some other cases, you need patience again. Because some problems just gets reported over and over by different people, sometimes by the same people, and during different processes. And you have to explain the nature of the problem and the possible solution over and over. And
that's all.
And that's all. We don't.